Okay, now, 17, Revelation 17. We are going to be looking at the false religion that is going to be taking place during the tribulation. We have Revelation 17 and 18, but then in Revelation chapter 19 is when you have the Battle of Armageddon, and then you have the second coming of Christ. And you must remember that the rapture is not the second coming. The second coming is when Jesus Christ comes to set up his earthly kingdom and destroys Satan. Tell me so far what we have. I want to test you memory. Tell me what we have learned so far.
That's some bad stuff.
Besides that, what have y'all learned?
We won't be here.
We won't be here, okay.
Some even worse stuff.
Like what?
The water.
If somebody was to ask you what's going to happen during the 7-year tribulation, what would y'all say?
You don't want to be here.
Water built in the mountains.
Okay. Okay. What else?
There'll be no mercy.
No mercy. Okay. What else?
There's be all kind of peace and relief. Floods don't dry up.
Okay.
We should accept the Lord before this happened to you.
Okay. What else? Anything else? I'm trying to find something in my Bible really quick. All right. And y'all, in your opinion, when do you think the Lord's going to come back? Anytime.
When he gets ready.
When he gets ready. How much longer do you think it's going to be, in your opinion?
When he gets ready.
When he gets ready. All right.
Sooner than we think.
Sooner than we think. All right. We're going to be, you think the world's going to be caught off guard?
Yes.
All right. Now, Revelation chapter 17. Revelation 17. We are now looking at the false religion. We're now looking at the false religion. We're going to be looking at the seven kings. And then we're going to be looking at the 10 kings. And so the 7 nations and then the 10 kings. We're going to be looking at this woman that is known as a Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abomination of the earth. We're going to look at that really quick. And now, on chapter 17 and chapter 18, what you are basically doing, there is not a time period here. What you are looking at in 17 and 18, he is basically filling in the gaps of what he has left out so far. The big thing that he is going to be talking about is going to be the false religion and the false gospel that is going to be spread. Now, in chapter 17 and 18, you're looking at different types of views. This is a view an earthly / heavenly view, because what is going to be taking on earth and also what is going to be taking place in heaven. So you're going to be having two views here. Look in verse 1. Look in verse 1. And it says, "And there came one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither." Why do you think these angels are always quick to explain to John what is happening? He can interpret it, explain it to us. Do you think that it may be also they are trying to give a reason for what is happening instead of just God doing it? Because God knows that we are a people that need why is this happening? Or why is this taking place? So what is happening is not only so that he can interpret it, but also so that he can also explain. God is explaining why he is doing what he is doing, okay? Now, and it says, "And one of the angels came, and he talked with me, saying, Come hither, and I will show unto thee the judgment." All right? Now, this is the whole ball of wax, if you will, judgment, okay? And you'll notice what this is called. It is a great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Now, when you are dealing with false religion, especially in the Old Testament, it is always dealt with as a harlot or dealt with as fornication. Leaving your first love or leaving your love and going and being with another. There are several examples of this in the Old Testament. I wrote down just a few. If you go to Jeremiah chapter 2 verse 20. Jeremiah chapter 2 verse 20. All right, Jeremiah 2:20. For of old time I have broken thy yoke and burst thy bands, and thou saidest, I will not transgress, when upon every high hill, and what it talks about is every high hill, where they would put their false idols or put their false altars, was always on top of a hill so that everything could be seen. And Jeremiah says, upon every high hill and under every green tree thou wanderest, playing the harlot. Go to Joshua 24. Joshua 24. Joshua 24, 12 through 16. It says, I sent the hornet before you, which drove them out from before you. When the children of Israel crossed over into the promised land, why were they to get rid of everybody that was not Jew? Why were they supposed to get rid of the other tribes or the other people or nations? There was one reason. Do what?
Still thinking under the law.
Who did those people worship? They didn't want them to mix, because when they started mixing with other races, what did they do? They poured them away from Jehovah. Do you remember King Solomon? What did that in the last few parts of his life? What happened to King Solomon?
He left God.
He left God. Why?
He started worshiping because he had so many wives. It was
Unjew. Non-Jew. Okay. All right. Now, and it says, I sent the hornet before you and drove them out. And it says, even the 2 kings of the Amorites, but not with thy word, nor with thy bow. And I have given you a land for which you did not labor, and cities which you did not build, and you dwell in them, and in the vineyards and in the olive yards which ye planted, not do you eat. Now therefore fear the Lord, serve him with sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood, and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord. And if it seem evil unto you, serve the Lord. Choose you this day whom ye will serve, whether it be the gods of your fathers served on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in the land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And the people answered this and said, we are going to do that, basically. We're not going to serve other gods. That is the reason that God wanted them to go into the promised land and drive out all of the, you can call them ites, Canaanites, Ishmaelites, Jebusites, all of them. Because they knew that they would be poured away from their true God. And they would start worshiping other gods. Go to Judges 2:19. Judges 2:19 says this. And it came to pass, when the judge was dead, that they returned and corrupted themselves more than their fathers, following other gods to serve them. So what happens, especially in the book of Judges, they turn away from God. And the main reason, what is the main reason that God put the children of Israel in Babylonian and Assyrian captivity?
So they would rely on him.
Besides that, they did one thing. We've been talking about it. They served other gods. And he said, you keep serving these other gods, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put you in captivity. And they kept serving these other gods. So what he did is he put them in Babylonian and Assyrian captivity. So when you look, especially in the Old Testament, when you're looking at false religion, when you're looking at things like that, it is always dealing with harlots, fornication. That is how he describes it. All right, now, go back to Revelations. Go back to Revelations. This is how she is described. A great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Now, when that word says many waters, you're dealing with the entire earth. All right? The whole world. And what she is described as, and when you're dealing, and we'll go ahead and go down to verse 5, but we'll skip back up to verse 2 in a minute. When you see the word Babylon in the New Testament, especially in the book of Revelations, you are not dealing with the city. That Babylon is symbolic. When you look at Babylon, go back to Genesis. Let me see if I can find it really, really quick. You go back to Babylon. Let me see if I can find it. Chapter 11 of Genesis. When you see Babylon in the book of Revelations, it's symbolic of what you're looking at in Genesis chapter 11. And the whole earth was of one language and one speech. Everything was one. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. They all stayed there. What did God basically tell Moses? Told Noah, be fruitful and multiply, spread out. Don't congregate. And they said one to another, go let us make brick. Notice it's a lot about us and they. Go let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick and stone and slime, for they had mortar. And they said, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. When you study the Tower of Babel, what you're basically looking at is what man is trying to equal himself to God. And it is what they are trying to do is create a one world religion. We're going to build, this is all about us. This what we are going to do. We are going to make brick. We are going to make mortar. We're going to do this. We're going to build this tower. We're going to build it up to heaven. We're going to build it up to God. We're going to so we can make a name for ourselves unless we get scattered off the face of the earth. So when you're looking at the word Babylon in the book of Revelations, what it is basically talking about is not a geographical location. What you're talking about is a type of, is a typology. Okay? What you're dealing with when you're looking at Babylon in verse 5, and we'll go back up to verse 2, is it is a type of a false religion in trying to become one. All right? Now, she is described as a great whore that sitteth upon many waters. What was the one thing that Jesus Christ, even in the four Gospels, did not tolerate was false religion. That is the one thing that really rubbed him raw about the Pharisees, Sadducees, scribes, and Sanhedrins. With whom the kings of the earth, all right? Now, we're dealing with kings. You're dealing with presidents. You're dealing with men of power. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. And the inhabitants of the earth have made drunk with the wine of her fornication. All right? So there it is. What is when you remember on the Miss America thing, they always ask her the questions. And they always say, if you could give the world one thing, what would it be? They'd always say world peace. I want everybody to get along. That is the one thing that the world has been striving for, is to bring everybody, to get them on board on the same thing, on the same cause. All right? And it is not through economics. It is not going to be through television. It is not going to be through comedy. It is not going to be through social status. It is going to be through religion. What is the one topic that people do not like to discuss besides politics? Religion. Why?
Because everybody's got different views.
Everybody got different opinions and everybody's divided. And they'll usually say something like this: listen, we can agree to disagree. And what is happening now when you get to Revelation chapter 17, it is not kosher and it is not going to be lawful to agree to disagree. You either get on board or you're done. So there's going to have to be a one world type order, a one world religion. And this is what it says: with the kings of the earth she is committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth had made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he, talking about this angel, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, away from, okay? Now, you'll notice that when you're dealing with false religion and false doctrine, it is always in a place that is barren, okay? It is always in a place that it cannot grow, in the wilderness. So where this is going to start up at is in the wilderness. And I want you to look. So he carried me away into the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman set up on a scarlet-colored beast. All right? A scarlet-colored beast. And the two beasts we have talked about so far is a beast coming up out of the sea and a beast coming up out of the earth. The beast coming up out of the sea is the Antichrist. The beast coming up out of the earth is the false prophet. The beast that John is describing here is not the false prophet. He is not talking about the devil, the dragon. He is talking about who? Who's going to rule and reign the earth? The Antichrist, through the spirit of Satan. Okay? So what she is doing, I want you to look how she is described. She sits upon a scarlet-colored beast, scarlet, blood red. And what is the devil or what is the Antichrist going to be known for during this time? Wars. Whoever does not agree with him, he's going to get him out of the way. So this is the type, this is the color that is used. Full of names of blasphemy. Now look how he is described, having 7 heads and 10 horns. This beast, not a literal dragon. This is symbolic of what John is seeing. And I want you to look in verse 4. And the woman was arrayed. And when you say that word arrayed, it means from head to toe. All together, okay? The woman was arrayed. Now, this is not a woman. Now, remember, this is a false religion. This is not a person. Okay? The woman was arrayed in purple. Now, when you're reading in the Old Testament, or in the New Testament, what was the one color of royalty? Purple. Why was it such a royal color?
Because it was expensive.
It was expensive and it was hard to make. So when you're dealing with purple, remember the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. What was the rich man clothed in every day? Purple. So it's a symbol of royalty, okay? So this false religion is not just a backwoods type of religion. It is a very lucrative, wealthy religion. Okay? Not millions of dollars, but billions of dollars. All right?
Sounds like Scientology, doesn't it?
Sounds like Scientology. Yeah, that's not a free religion. You got to get paid to get into that. Arrayed in purple and in scarlet. There it is again. And decked. That means ears, neck, fingers, everything. Decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. Now, if you watch the TBN, what is their main gospel? What? It's money. If you give me this, what are you going to do?
Oh, you get a blessing.
You get a blessing. Creflo Dollar. If everybody sends me $1, if I get 11 million folks send me $1, I have enough to fly me a jet. It's all about money. That's all it's about. It's all about if you do this or you do that, you will be filthy rich. Now, I'm not, and when you're dealing with the false religion, ever since the beginning of Acts, the first church, up until 2017, you're always going to have a false religion or a false gospel. Okay? And you're always going to have different types of religion. You got Catholicism, you've got Buddhism, you've got Islam, you've got what else? There's thousands of them out there.
Moonies.
Huh?
Aren't they Moonies?
Yeah, I remember the Moonies, and then you have all of these types of false religion. And the one thing that God always drove home with the children of Israel is do not worship other gods. Don't do it. Don't worship other gods. That is why the Jews hated the Samaritans so much. Okay? Because they thought that they worshiped a false god, not the true God that was on top of the real mountain. Okay? Now, look what is in her hand. Having a golden cup in her hand full of abomination and filthiness of her fornication. Do you remember that he didn't have cups, but he had vials? Was they full? They were overflowing. So can you see how they're trying to become like a true religion, covering up the abomination and putting it to make it look like the real gospel? I used this analogy a few months ago. It's kind of like when you go to Cold Stone Creamery and you pick out your ice cream. They give you the scoop of ice cream, and then they got 50 different types of flavors or toppings that you can put on the ice cream cone, and you can get as many as you want. And by the time you put all those flavors and all those chocolate chips and M&Ms and walnuts and all that crap on top of your ice cream cone, guess what it's all covered up? The ice cream cone. You're just eating junk. And so what is happening is that they are trying to disguise this false religion to a point where people are going to believe it. All right? If you watch the mega church pastors, they use Jesus as a byword to satisfy their critics. That's it. So she's clothed in purple scarlet, has gold, precious stones, and a golden cup in her hand full, all right, of abomination, filthiness of her fornication. Now, this is written upon her forehead. Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Babylon the Great, which is a false religion or a false system, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Do you know who she reminds me of? Go to 2 Kings chapter 18.
Chapter what?
18. This is when Elijah goes against the prophets of Baal, and everybody knows that story. The prophets of Baal was being paid for by one person. Who was it? It was not Ahab. Who was it? Jezebel. All right. If you remember, in one of the first churches that we studied about in the book of Revelations, who is the woman that is described as being in one of the churches? Jezebel. Now, Jezebel had false prophets, right, and a false religion. So Elijah, by God, told him, you are going to go up on that mountain and you're going to challenge them. And when the true God basically is put on display, then you get to 1 Kings chapter 19, and in verse 1 it says, and Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah done, and with all how he had slain all the prophets with a sword. And Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And he runs, and guess where he goes? Into the wilderness. So, this false religion is described as a type of religion that Jezebel would have instituted in the book of 1 Kings. And I want you to look. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints. Those are martyrs. And with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Why?
It's not really admiration like we know it today.
It's almost like, how can these people swallow this junk that she's feeding them?
They were astonished.
Yeah. So when he sees this, not a woman, it's a false religion. And the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her. Remember, she is riding on a beast, on a dragon, the Antichrist. And that is how he is going to set up this order through religion. So what he is carrying on his back is this false religion. All right? With the 7 heads and the 10 horns. And the beast that thou sawest was and is not. All right? Was and is not. And he is described in that also again, but last of that was and is not and yet is. He was and is not and yet he is. If you'll go back to Revelations chapter 13, go to verse 11. Now remember how how this dragon is described. Again, was and is not, and yet he is. Revelations 13:11, and behold, another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake like the dragon. And he exceedeth all the power of the first beast before him that causes the earth, and them which dwell among them to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Look in verse 14. And deceiveth them that dwell upon the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do it. In the sight of the beast, saying unto them that dwell upon the earth, that they should make an image of the beast, which had the wound by the sword, and he did live. There is your Antichrist. Because he says at one time he was alive, and then when it says is not, meant he died. And then it says yet is means he's back again. There's going to be a false type resurrection with this guy. And we looked over it probably, seems like 2 months ago. So at one time he was, and then he died, and yet he is now back again. But I want you to look, and the beast that thou sawest in verse 8 was and is not, and he shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition, which that word basically means to waste. And they that dwell upon the earth shall wonder, now this is very interesting, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundations of the world. Where's your name written at? Book of life. When was it written there? Read that in verse 8, what I just read.
Before the foundations of the world.
Was that before was that before you got saved?
No. Yeah, that was long time.
It was written in the book of life before the foundations of the world. And when they beheld the beast that was, is, not, and yet is. Now I want you to look. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains. If you study anything about Rome, Rome was known as the city on 7 hills. If you look at that word mountains in the Greek, it don't mean mountains like we're thinking of. It means rolling hills. Rome was known as the city of seven hills. Who is the big dog on the block in John's day? It's Rome. Okay? Now, you're going to find out what these are. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth, which is Rome. Okay? This is where all this is taken out. It's Rome. What was the greatest empire ever? Roman Empire. I mean, there's been thousands of books written on the greatest book is to follow the Roman Empire. And it's about that thick, and this guy goes and tells you why he thinks that Rome fell. It was the most wealthy empire on the earth. And we're still fascinated with that place. And it says, in verse 10, and there are 7 kings. 7 kings. All right? Now, 5 are fallen. All right? So we got 7. 5 are fallen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That leaves how many? All right. And I want you to look. He says 1 is, which means what? He's alive. And that leaves us 1. And the other is not yet. What does that mean? He hasn't come yet. But if you look in verse 11, there is an 8th one. There's not 7, there's 8. Okay? Now, if you go back to Daniel, let me look at my cheat sheet. If you go back to the book of Daniel, let me look at it real quick. Book of Daniel, chapter 2. You are going to see some of these empires. I want you to look. You remember that dream that Nebuchadnezzar had about the statue? And the dream, and it says, and he calls Daniel in, and he tells him what this statue means. And you have the world empires as the Babylonian Empire, for one. You have the second one is going to be the Medo-Persian Empire, which is 2. The third one is going to be the Greece Empire, which was Alexander the Great. That the Greece Empire falls in between the Old and New Testament. You can't study the Bible and get anything about Greece. You have to go back to history books. The fourth one is what? Rome. So that's 4. But there's got to be 2 more. Guess what it is? What was the 2 great empires before these? We studied about one in Exodus. Egypt. And then there was another one. There was 2 types of captivities that was brought down. Babylonian captivity and what? Starts with an A. Syrian captivity. So we got Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, the Medo-Pers, you got Greece, and now those are the 5 that are already passed away. Are they even in existence anymore? No. They're done. Okay? They're gone. And then when he says the one that is, who was ruling when John was on the Isle of Patmos? Who put him on the Isle of Patmos? Rome. All right? So there are 6 of the 7 kings. And then he talks about, I want you to look, there is one that is going to come. All right? That is the empire that we don't know. There's been speculation upon speculation what this empire is. Some people say it's a European empire. Some people say it's NATO. We don't know. But there is an empire that is going to be ushered in by the Antichrist. Okay? So you've got the 5 that's fallen. You've got Rome that is in John's day, that is. And then you have this one, and it says, look, and the other is yet to come. And when he cometh, he must continue in a short space. It's very short. All right? This empire that he is going to usher in only is a short period of time. Now, a lot of folks will say, well, you've got the 7 kings. There's 8. And the beast that was and is not, who is that? Antichrist. Where we at? And the beast that was and is not, even he is number 8. Now I want you to look what's going to happen. And is the 7 that goeth into perdition. I'll explain that verse here in a second. Go to verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings. Now, how many toes has people got? In that vision of the statue in Daniel chapter 2, how many toes does that statue have? 10. We don't know who these people are. Now, I've piddled and looked, and you'll get every answer you'll get every answer of who these 10 people are. Okay? Some people think it's NATO. Some people think it's the Europeans. We don't really. It says this. He's got 8, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings. These are going to be ushered in. Okay? These are going to be ushered in with the 8. All right? Is that clear? The 8th empire is going to be ushered in with 10 kings. All right? Now, a lot of people say that these 10 kings are popes. This is Catholicism. Okay? Which have received no kingdom as yet. When it means as yet, it means there's still a future. All right? But receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. That's not long, is it? We'll be here in an hour. We'll be here for an hour and 20 minutes. It's not long, is it? So it's a very short period. Now, when he says he's seen these 7 horns, are these seven heads? What he is basically saying, are these empires going to come back? No, these empires have had the spirit of the Antichrist the whole time. Okay, Pharaoh is a type of the Antichrist in the book of Exodus. Now, they've got 10 horns, which are 10 kings, which have yet to come to power. Look at verse 13. What is the one thing that everybody wants? We want one currency, one religion, we want one everything. One. Look, verse 13. These have one mind. Okay? And they shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These 10 kings are basically going to hand their kingdoms over to the Antichrist so you can have it. Okay? Because what this world wants is not 7 or 8 or 10 or however many presidents or dictators. They want one person to tell them what to do. Cuts through all the red tape. So what he is doing, they said they got one mind and they're going to give their power and strength to the beast. These shall make war. This goes back. Now this will be picked up in chapter 20. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords, King of kings. And they that are with him are called the chosen and faithful. Who are with him? Christians, okay? And he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So this one religion is going to take over worldwide. Now, I'm of the opinion I don't think it's Catholicism. I don't think it's Catholics. What's the fastest growing religion we got today? Muslims. You ever seen Catholics besides during the first of the century or the second century? In the last 10 years, what is the one religion that likes blood? Muslims. I think this is just my opinion. I think this is the Islamic religion that is going to rise up. It's the fastest growing religion. That is the one religion you can't say anything negative about on TV. You can't say nothing negative about Islam. Okay? Every state just about has got some kind of Islamic shrine. It is the fastest growing religion. Guess where Islam dates its roots back to? There's one city, Babylon. That's one that is all goes back. I think, and I could be wrong, it could be Catholicism, I don't know. I think it's Islamic. Okay? And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked. Now look, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, or the false religion, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdoms to the beast, until the words of God have been fulfilled. Even though they hate what is happening, God is going to put it into their hearts that they are going to give over everything to this religion. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth, which is false doctrine.